Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. Hey Daryl, hey Dax, hey Laura. Is the echo gone? Checking on echo. Ah, awesome. It took me quite a while to fight my way through it, but it was settings pretty deep in the audio. And I finally managed to figure out which one it was that was causing the issue. Yes, no echo, Laura. Yay! I was casting around a little while ago trying to figure out a topic once again. It comes around and hits me, and most of the time I just can't really come up with a topic anymore. It feels like I've covered an awful lot of topics over and over again. But this week is a little different, and I feel like we ought to give a little bit of time in this live stream to a fellow Fish Fam member. And I don't know if you guys know her or not. She rarely shows up on any of the live shows that I've ever seen. Or if she does, she doesn't say anything that I've seen. But I'm talking about Deb Tim, a Canadian girl. And I've been following Deb since she first started her YouTubing. In the beginning, she wouldn't get on camera. She stayed off camera. And finally, she started getting on camera. In the beginning, she had several small tanks of African cichlids. And now she has tons of tanks and all kinds of fish in them. She's still more African cichlid than anything else, and she does an amazing job raising her fry. Her tanks are like you could eat off. You could pour the water out of her tanks and put your dinner on them and eat off of it. Her tanks are always spotless. She keeps ferrets. She has several different types of pets that she keeps, but she works really hard at doing videos when she does them, as far as studying and trying her best to get to the bottom of the information available or the problem that she's having. Hey Susan, I thought Q did a wonderful job of gifting you with your Fish Fam Mom aprons. They look beautiful. I was proud. I had to stop watching when you started crying, though, because real men don't cry. Okay, so the reason that I am talking about Deb Tim is that in the past year or so, she bought a couple of large tanks. Hey, Fish Tropic. She bought a couple of large tanks from someone that she found up in Canada. She's Canadian. And she found some large tanks. She was looking for larger tanks. She was starting to get into larger African cichlids, and in the process she got into larger South Americans. And one of the tanks that she bought came with a flowerhorn. You know, flowerhorns are kind of up and down in the hobby, as to some people despise them because they're hybrids. Some people love them because they're so personable and so boisterous and so expressive. If you ever want a fish to play fetch with or do something like that with, flowerhorns have the personality to do that. And Deb named her flowerhorn Humphrey, and everything has gone along swimmingly for 6, 8, 9 months. And now all of a sudden, it's pretty clear that Humphrey has swim bladder disease. And swim bladder disease is something that, down through all my years of experience in this hobby, that is really difficult to deal with. You know, if you can catch a fish very early in swim bladder issues, one of the old school methods is to take frozen peas and deshell them and feed them to the fish. For some reason, peas seem to help swim bladder disease. But it's obvious that this has gone on to the point where Humphrey is no longer eating. And, you know, clearly Humphrey is of an age where he may be, you know, the general idea is 5 to 7 years is about all you're going to get out of a flowerhorn, partially because of the fish that are used to breed them, the genetics. You know, if you have a Jack Dempsey live 10 years, you're doing really well. That's not normal in the wild, I don't think, and don't quote me on that, but I think that 10 years is about the most you're going to get out of a Jack Dempsey, and it is my inclination, not that I know this for sure, that Dempsey-like fish are part of the breeding in flowerhorns. Now, I can't swear that that's true, but it's just from looking at them, looking at their behaviors, looking at how they act. I just feel like, you know, that Dempsey is in there somewhere. It may not be, it may be some similar fish that's like a Dempsey. And Fish Tropic says his Jack lived for 12 years. And yes, they can if they're particularly healthy, but that's pushing the far limit. And so I wanted to spend a little time talking about this issue of swim bladder disease. Now, this is an issue that mostly occurs, or at least in my experience, mostly occurs in larger cichlids or larger fish that you will get. But cichlids and South American cichlids seem to be particularly susceptible to this. So we're talking about jaguars and Dempseys and flowerhorns and a lot of those fish like that. This is an issue that you get. It often occurs with larger African cichlids too. A lot of the Rift Lake cichlids get this. So larger cichlids. And what I'd like to do is, I keep touting this handbook of fish diseases, and I would like to go through the flow chart that is in the handbook of fish diseases. And what I want to do with at least a good portion of this live stream is to direct our attention to the ways that we have experienced swim bladder disease, how often the fish die from swim bladder disease, when they get swim bladder disease, what caused them getting swim bladder disease. You know, the normal thinking is that it's a water quality issue, that when the water quality starts going south, you start seeing things like swim bladder disease, hole in the head, all that kind of stuff that comes along. But in this case, I am here to tell you that Deb Tim's tank had no issues with water quality, other than maybe she changed it too much. You know, her tanks are spotless. I kept telling her to let a little mulm develop because some of her fish needed that mulm to graze on, the smaller fish. But Deb Tim keeps her tanks like she keeps her house. It's spotlessly clean all the time. But I just thought it might be worthwhile because this is an issue that all of us that keep fish are going to face sooner or later, even in some smaller species. You know, I've seen guppies with swim bladder disease. So it's possible for them to all get this problem. It's just, what do we do with the problem? How do we treat it? Like I say, the old school method is frozen peas. You shell them, you feed them to the fish while they're still eating, and sometimes that will cause it, break it, make it stop. And I don't know why. I don't know what the chemical issues are, or whether it's a, you know, some vegetable ingredient that's in peas that helps defeat the whatever's causing swim bladder. And swim bladder's been kind of a mysterious issue all down through the years as to what exactly causes it, what is the best method of treatment. And my experience is that almost all treatments are iffy. That once a fish develops bad swim bladder disease to the point where it's floating at the surface, hey Victor, welcome to the stream. Once a fish has gotten swim bladder so bad that it's floating at the surface or laying on the bottom or swimming in circles upside down, oftentimes the disease progresses to the point where either the fish needs to be put down, or the disease progresses to the point where the fish dies. And it's not a very good prognosis. But down through the years, I have seen a lot of people solve swim bladder. Hey Joseph, welcome to the stream, man. Our time is getting short, buddy. We're almost down to a month away from Peru, and cheers. Awesome. I really enjoyed the fish chat that Corey did with Dean and Corvus. Joel. Okay, so what I'm going to do, this book is one that I have touted and done reviews on and tried my best to get you guys to recognize as a excellent resource to have in your compendium of volumes that you use to study up on, learn how to use, and I hope they won't get me on copyright for this, but I am going to go straight to page 45, and it's chart 16, air bladder or swim bladder, and I'm going to show you the chart. It is on this page, and this is a flow chart book. Most of the stuff that you will see in this book is a flow chart. The picture down here at the bottom is of an inflamed swim bladder on a dissected, of course, fish. So this is a flow chart, and I'm going to walk us through this flow chart in hopes that it might help Deb Tim some way, or that it might help some other aquarist that runs across this issue. You know me, I'm always harping on books and information that are in books that, you know, may or may not help you to become a better aquarist. I just really feel like in this age of instant information from the internet that we are going past a really good source of information, and that is what is contained in books. Now, this book was put out in '74, so it is highly dated, but even still, the information that's contained in this book and in other books, hey Teresa, welcome to the stream, is valid. It still offers us insight on how how other people at different times have handled this issue. So, so let's walk through chart 16, air bladder or swim bladder. The air bladder contains purulent fluid. Large numbers of bacteria are found in the fluid and the wall. Yes, this involves a bacterial infection, usually as a result of an inflammation. Examine the other organs too. See chart 21. So chart 21 is obviously going to give you information. But in that sense, it's post-mortem. You're not going to examine the other organs of a fish. If the answer to A is no, then it goes to B. The wall of the air bladder is hardened. Yes, the air bladder is inflamed. And the flow chart goes to raise the water temperature by 3 to 5 degrees centigrade for 5 days. And if any of you have watched Deb Tim's video about Humphrey, she says that she has tried raising the water temperature and adding salt to the water, and that she found no result. I'm not sure she did it for 5 days, but she's getting advice from a lot of great people. So I think that it's probably the case that she raised it for 5 days. And if the answer to B is no, C. Round cysts of various sizes, usually smaller than 1 millimeter, occur in the wall of the air bladder. And if the answer to that is yes, the fish are affected by the sporozoan Emeria. See chapter 631. Examine the other organs, too, for cysts. Treatment according to method C22 is only rarely successful. See chart 20. So chart 20 is obviously a chart on other organs of a fish's body. So method C22. Now in the back of this book, after you go through all the normal stuff, you will find treatment of diseased fish. And it just goes through method C through whatever. And method C22 is furazolidone, 1 gram cachet or envelope containing 300 milligrams active ingredient and 700 milligrams glucose. This drug is cheap but can only be administered in feed. The active ingredient is available only in 500 gram packages, thus is relatively expensive. Pure furazolidone can be given alone, without other substances, as a short bath. Its uses for Pseudomonas species, Aeromonas species, Vibro species, Trichomonas species, and many Coccidia. Dosage and feed. Add at 50 to 55 degrees centigrade 300 milligrams of furazolidone to 100 grams of feed made according to method B5, and feed morning and evening for 6 days. Dosage for long bath. 500 milligrams pure furazolidone to 100 liters water in a separate tank. Do not filter over charcoal. Change 40 to 50% of the water after 3 days. Residual medication can be removed from the water by filtration over activated charcoal. So that is its treatment for Emeria, sporozoan Emeria. And I'm not sure exactly what that translates to the medication that we find on our shelves in our fish stores right now. But I think further back into the book, they do like a transformation stuff about what it actually ends up being in our day and age. So it is possible to find a translation of the medication that they are using to the medication that we have available to us now. So I would, hey Priscilla, welcome to the stream. Hey KG Cichlids. Hey 54 Punchy. How are you guys all doing today? Welcome to the stream. We are going through swim bladder disease today because Deb Tim, a Canadian girl, is losing her flowerhorn, Humphrey, to it. And I would highly recommend that anyone go check out Deb Tim's channel. It's just DEB TIM, a Canadian girl. She's from Canada. And Deb is a great member of the fish fam. She doesn't usually fraternize very much with all of us, and I think that's just basically her personality. But anyway, I'd love for you guys to offer your insights and your thoughts about, hey AC Aquatics, I'd love for you guys to offer your insights in case we can get Deb Tim to watch this live stream. So basically that's what I'm doing here, is trying to offer Deb Tim the best advice that I can give her on swim bladder disease. Okay, so that was chart 22. If the answer to C is no, D, large inclusions up to 10 millimeters occur in the wall of the air bladder. If the answer is yes, the fish is affected with microspora. See chapter 633, and treatment is not possible. Examine the other organs too. So if it's microspora, there's nothing you can do, or nothing that in 74 you could do. If the answer is to D is no, the anterior part of the air bladder, the part towards the abdomen, is inflamed. These fish were standing on their heads or else lying on the bottom, and that's what that picture photograph was inflammation of the swim bladder. And if the answer is yes, a bacterial infection is the cause. See chapter 3.11. Treatment by method C26 usually works, but is not successful in all cases. And so we're going to go to C26. Method C26 is trimethoprim. Use: bacterial and coccal infections of internal organs and blood. Spectrum of action: staphylococci, hemolytic, streptococci, pneumococci, Escherichia coli, enterococci, Proteus, Haemophilus, influenza, Salmonella, Shigella. So that's what trimethoprim is used to treat. Combining trimetoprim with a sulfonamide offers a significant improvement in efficacy. There are ready-made combinations available of trimethoprim and sulfamethoxazole in optimal proportions. Since pathogens develop resistance very rapidly, the medication should be used only once every 6 months. Commercially available preparations include Drylin, Usaprim, Borgel solution 7.5, and Cotrimstata forte. Drylin and Usaprim are older preparations with low concentrations of active ingredient. Today in Europe, the most commonly used preparations are Borgel and Cotrimstata forte. Dosage: 1 table, I'm assuming that's tablespoon, Cotrimstata forte to 80 liters aquarium water for 3 to 5 days. The filter cannot contain any charcoal. The filter floss has to be washed out thoroughly before administration of the drug. 15 milliliters of Borgel solution to 100 liters of water. For injection, calculate 2 millimeters Borgel solution per 200 grams body weight. A second injection can be given if necessary after 48 hours. This injection is given intraperitoneally. Only veterinarians and other experts should immunize or vaccinate fish. So once again, this book, hey Valley Fish, welcome to the stream. Once again, this book is giving us almost veterinarian instructions, but it's the kind of technical information that can sometimes be very helpful to you when you are suffering the potential loss of a show fish or something like that, some fish that you have a great deal of investment in, either money or rearing or food or whatever. Sometimes you are faced with a situation where the normal, oh, try giving them green peas isn't enough to really help. And sometimes you need the kind of information that a veterinarian would give to you if you went and paid them to tell you what was going on and what they could potentially do. Now, a lot of those medications that were listed were obviously from Europe and may well not be available in this day and age to us as fish keepers. They keep trying their best. Yeah, 54 Punchy says green peas only helps constipation. It's not a cure-all. Well, in the old school days, 54 Punchy, for swim bladder, I was always told shelled green peas. Buy a bag of frozen green peas, pull the shells off of them, split them in half, and drop them in while the fish is still eating food. Now, Deb Tim has been force feeding her fish because it no longer shows any interest in eating even its favorite foods. So that's kind of a moniker to say, gee, swim bladder is something that's so deleterious that we need to catch it early, understand what it is, understand how it affects our fish, and okay, 54 Punchy says, but if it is swim bladder, green peas will do nothing. Okay, 54 Punchy, you're helping Deb Tim, a Canadian girl, right now. What is your preferred method for solving swim bladder disease? I know that she has tried several different things. She's tried raising the temperature and adding salt. She's tried 2 medications that she had listed. One was basically like erythromycin, I think, or some equivalent of erythromycin, and some other one as well. And I think the people that gave her the advice, one of them is one that is often here in this live stream. I'm missing him today because I was hoping I could get him to talk about it and talk about his communication with Deb Tim, is Cooper's cichlid, Chef Cooper's. Yeah, and 54 Punchy says totally depends on the cause. Like you were reading, some cases there's nothing you can do. Well, I'm also guessing that Deb Tim's fish is about 5 years old because it was fairly full grown when she got it. KG Cichlid says you could make a concoction of Epsom salt, green peas, and general cure mixed with pellets with just enough water to dampen it. Let it dry out a bit. It's worth a shot. Yeah, unfortunately, Humphrey is no longer taking food, so Deb Tim would probably have to mix that concoction, then blend it, and then force feed it to Humphrey. She said that his gut is working fine when she force feeds it, but she just really feels like force feeding a fish is almost an act of desperation. You know, sometimes it works, but most often it doesn't work. She said that Humphrey would digest and poop just fine, but I think she started feeling badly about doing it. Yeah, I know. I was hoping IFG would come in here too, and we could pick his brain about, because IFG has some I know that African cichlid keepers, especially the ones that are really good, have dealt with this issue a lot, because a lot of African cichlids, the Rift Lake cichlids, develop these issues, swim bladder, and sometimes with them it's what they're being fed as much as it is any other kinds of issues. I know that just the type of food alone that they get fed, you know, if it's too high in veggies or if it's too high in protein, it can cause swim bladder issues as well. So I was hoping that those guys, that Chef Cooper and IFG would be in here and that they might offer Deb Tim some really. 54 Punchy says you have to be very careful with some of the fancy goldfish too. Yeah, you're right. I don't keep goldfish, so that's something that well, I just my heart went out to her because of how much she has enjoyed interacting with Humphrey and how interactive he has been with her. And you can just tell that her heart's breaking, that she can't cure her fish. And so I really wanted to spend some time in this stream to, you know, I'm always casting about for ideas on what to run a stream about. But this one just pulled at my heartstrings enough where I really felt like I needed to try to offer Deb Tim the best advice that I could. And my honest advice to her is, and it's hard advice to give, is that the fish has potentially reached the limit of his life, and so issues like this will cascade over and through him, even if she manages to pull him through this swim bladder disease issue. He's reached the point in life where his ability to break down diseases attacking him and to fend them off is probably getting weaker and weaker. And so, you know, there comes a point in time where we as pet owners have the onus on us. If you buy a dog, if you buy a cat, if you buy a parakeet, if you buy a fish, at some point you will be faced with the pet suffering so badly that it is on you as the pet's owner, as the pet's advocate, to put that pet down, to bring him or her out of the suffering that they are going through. And it's a terrible job. It is a horrible feeling to put a pet that you love down. And you know, this, this gets into different grades with fish. Most fish are not what we consider as pets. They don't interact with us enough to where we, our heartstrings are attached to them in the way that they would be with a dog or a cat or a parrot or some animal of higher order that we really are simpatico with and love as we would love a child, or it becomes really difficult to be the one that has to say the suffering is so great and the quality of life is so poor that as this pet's owner, as this pet's advocate, I need to help him, help her out of the suffering that they are going through. They can't do it themselves. They are looking to me as my responsibility to take them out of their suffering and to humanely put them down. Now, humanely putting down a fish is often a little bag of water, and the fish goes into a 0-degree freezer compartment, and within seconds it is humanely killed. And my understanding is that freezing a fish causes it very little pain, that it's so quick, the cool down of temperature in such a rapid manner, it just basically takes them out. You can use clove oil. There are other ways to go through putting down a fish, but a lot of people will cull them to a larger fish that will eat them. It's all right if IFG can't make it, man. I understand. I was just hoping that IFG could lend some of his immense knowledge to this subject, and I will post to Deb Tim. I've been trying to hold off posting to her about this subject because it's such a death sentence for most fish. And I know that a lot of fish are cured of it, but you have to very quickly diagnose and recognize what is going on with your fish and treat them while they are still interested in food and while it is still possible to cure them before they go past the point of no return. Yeah, it's a really rough part of our hobby. There are really rough things about our hobby, rough ways to lose fish. Columnaris comes to mind. It's just a nightmare. It can spread to all of your other tanks. It can wipe out whole tanks of fish in a matter of days. So Columnaris is a really tough one. Any of the microbacteriums, think brain. Any of the tuberculosis microbacterium, and there are several of them, is just as deadly. It can wipe out an entire, protozoans are another one. They're really tough. Yeah, Ben Ochart did have a battle with Columnaris. And it's a nightmare situation. Well, I don't think Laura, I don't think that throwing a fish in a freezer is quite like throwing a mammal in the fire. Burning in a fire is going to be a whole lot different. Yeah, Ben did make it through, and you're right. He did have some very important losses of his fish, but it is a trial to go through this, and it's also a trial to go through swim bladder disease for a fish that is really a pet, not a fish that's just, I bought them in a bag and threw them in the tank and I've been watching them for a while. Well, I may be wrong that using a freezer is a painless way to euthanize a fish. I know that it's quick. I can't imagine that using clove oil is any less painless to a fish that's about to die than freezing is. Okay, so a lot of people are saying that clove oil is the best. Well, I can't argue that. I can't argue that statement. I'm coming from old school, and rather than take a meat cleaver and chop them through the brain like KG Cichlids is saying, I've never been able to do that with one of my fish. I've always been attached to them enough that I felt like, yeah, okay, so clove oil is like drugging them. All right, well, I maybe I better, relent to that. But I'm old school, and rather than a knife through the brain or a chop off of their head, I've always felt like that freezing them was as humane as I could get. So I've always done that. Plus, if you ever want to take a fish to a vet to have them go through, freezing is one of the best ways. Now, the best way is obviously a vat of alcohol and drop the fish into the alcohol, but freezing is also a way that in some cases doesn't break down the tissues so badly that they can't tell what happened or that they can't get slides of material. Yeah, freezing them is really quick, Joseph. And I'm not sure I'd want to watch a fish going to sleep to die in clove oil, so wrapping them up in a bag with a little bit of water and throwing them in a freezer has always been my methodology. You can hate me for that if that's what's required, but I really, 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 I feel for Deb Tim. I feel how her heartstrings are being ripped apart by this disease that she is unable to cure. And it is one that very oftentimes is incurable. Once it reaches a certain stage, swim bladder will almost always kill your fish. So, my heart goes out to her. I'm hoping to have done this live stream in Humphrey's honor, in a sense, and for Deb Tim to look at. And if anybody that knows better methodology than I read out of the Handbook of Fish Diseases and feels the same way about Deb Tim's loss here as I do, then I would encourage you later after the stream has been posted back up. Hey, IFG, thanks for dropping in, man. IFG, I know that you know who Deb Tim is. Deb Tim, a Canadian girl, because I've seen you on her streams. I mean, on her videos post a few times. She is losing her flowerhorn, Humphrey, to swim bladder disease. And I was hoping that you might add your 2 cents in here. I got out the handbook. She has done that on her last video where Humphrey is basically swimming around on the bottom on his side. She has raised the temperature and added salt. In Handbook of Fish Diseases, it says 5 days. To raise it for 5 days. And so I know that she has done that. I think she is trying erythromycin and some other antibiotic together, and she's tried them separately and gotten almost nothing to show for it. But the chances are that it's pretty obvious that she's going to lose the fish. I mean, by the dating on her videos, she may have already lost this fish, and my heart goes out to her. While she rarely, King British makes an awesome med. Borgal, Borgal, I think was the name of it, that was recommended in Handbook of Fish Disease from '74. That was one of the meta something, I can't remember the name. It's in the stream. I went through the swim bladder disease page, the flow chart in Handbook of Fish Diseases, and tried to show her what the diagnoses were. And swim bladder disease, okay, I am unaware of that, but it may be in some way part of what was recommended in Handbook of Fish Diseases. Sometimes it's hard for us to get those products, but maybe it's available in thanks, IFG. I'm just trying to reach out to a fellow aquarist who is obviously going through a lot of heartache over losing a fish. There are very few fish that are like flowerhorns, that are as personable and as pet-like. Ciprofloxacin. Okay, well, Cipro is probably the same Cipro we take as human beings when we have a very serious, when we need a very strong antibiotic. I've taken Cipro a couple of times, and man, I did not like it. It made my body feel like it was going through the bends or something. But in those cases, the doctor obviously felt like what I had going on was serious enough that I needed to take Cipro. Ciprofloxacin. That's not one that I'm aware of. I don't think I've seen it on a shelf anywhere in any fish store, but that doesn't mean that it's not available somewhere. So yeah, that might be something that Deb Tim needs to look at. I appreciate you dropping by, IFG, and offering these eminently useful kernels of knowledge here, because I was unaware of King British's med, and I was unaware of ciprofloxacin too. I know that a lot of African cichlid keepers, Rift Lake keepers, yeah, a lot of larger Rift Lake cichlids have it. And what did you use, IFG? The Cipro. That's one of the reasons why I was hoping to get you in on this, is that I felt like you would probably have some excellent information to offer Deb Tim. Chef Cooper's Cichlids is advising her, and somebody else, some name that I didn't recognize. And I know a lot of the other big fish keepers on YouTube have tried to offer her help. So I just wanted to point a spotlight on this issue, because it is something that as fish keepers we are almost all going to suffer through. Max, 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 come here, Growly Gus. Come here, Max. Maxie, not you, Rufus. I want Max. I can't pick you up. You're too fat. I can't pick you up and show you off to YouTube, but I could show Max off. Anyway, sorry about turning my back. Last resort is clout, but it's really strong. All right, now clout is one that I recognize. That's like using a Gatling gun to kill crows. All right, guys. We got IFG in here to help, and I really appreciate your time and effort, IFG, trying to help Deb Tim. Yeah, that's Rufus. Rufus is our Scotty Dachshund mix, and he weighs almost as much as my Dalmatian Pit mix, who's about 5 times taller than he is. King British. All right, well, thankfully, these days, the chat to a live stream stays up, and so hopefully if I can get Deb Tim to come and listen and look, maybe that information will get transferred to her. I highly recommend Deb Tim as a tangential Fish Fam member. She doesn't engage publicly very often, but she has many connections behind the scenes with a lot of different Fish Fam members. So I would highly recommend that everyone check her out. All right, guys, I'm going to shut this stream down. I thank you all for your participation and for your well wishes for Deb Tim's ailing flowerhorn Humphrey. Thanks, IFG. I really appreciate it, man. You've come through like gangbusters once again. And yes, all you guys have a good weekend. Take care of your fish. And good luck.